Good afternoon, everyone. Today we're going to do a little review of this 2022 Subaru Impreza hatchback. This is the premium trim, and this has the CVT automatic transmission. We're going to take this on a little drive, about 25 miles, mixed variety of roads, suburban roads, the Twisties, highway, just to see how this car drives. It has a 2-liter 4-cylinder boxer engine, making 152 horsepower. 145 foot-pounds of torque, and this car is in the compact hatchback category, along with the Corolla hatchback, Civic hatchback, and things like that. Talk a little bit about the styling. This car has this very eye-catching blue color on it. Lots of creases and folds on the front end, but they're subtle, they're small, and they develop over the wheel arches that connects to the strong character line down the door, into this other arch over the rear wheel. It's a very sharp-looking car, very crisp. It's somewhat aggressive without being overly crazy like the previous generation Honda Civic. So, like I said, we'll see how the car steers, how it sounds, how it drives, and then we'll give it a Schwartz score. But first, let's get in it and see how the seats are. Here we are in the back seat of the Subaru Impreza hatchback. I have the seat in front of me positioned for myself. I am about 6 feet, 6'1", and currently I have about 2 inches or so of legroom, and I have my front seat all the way down because that's how I like it. Foot room is compromised, although the bottom of the seat is not touching my shin, so it is clear all the way. The seat comfort itself, the seat foam is pretty hard, it's pretty flat. You can see there's not much bolstering. The thigh support is lacking. The seat cushion is rather short, so I'm only feeling it about 40% down the length of my legs. A lot of plastics back here. You have a solid plastic rear console, no rear air vents. The top of the door is plastic. There is a nice padded armrest there. A lot of plastic here. In terms of headroom, if I sit straight up, I have about ½ an inch to clear the roof. If I use up the rest of my leg room, then I have probably about an inch of headroom back here. In terms of rear visibility, Subaru does give you a quarter window back here. Although the C-pillar, it's a hatchback. It's small to moderate in size. Relatively small rear window, but Subarus are known to be easy to see out of, and this one's no exception, especially in the front. We'll talk about that in a second. Let's go and check out the front seat. Here we are on the front seat of the Subaru Impreza, and similar comments about the seats here. There's definitely more side bolstering, especially on the back, but it's not anything like that Mazda 6 we drove last time. So back support is okay. There's no lumbar adjustment, so you're kind of stuck with what you got. It's okay. My biggest complaint is with the bottom of the seat. The side bolstering is not really there, and you cannot adjust the angle of the seat cushion. So it's kind of flat. For longer drives, my legs kind of stick up in the air, so that's not great. In terms of the design of the interior, it's very nice. You can tell that they definitely spent time wanting it to look nice, but when you start feeling around, you realize, on the front doors, this top material is padded. Nice cushy armrest here. It has nice padded center console there, but everything else is kind of this plasticky material. You have kind of this soft rubber touch here with some nice stitching. The steering wheel is this fake leather material. It's a bit thin, but everything looks nice. You have this kind of fake carbon fiber look here. Bunch of glossy black plastic around the center screen. The climate controls are just simple knobs, but when you start moving them, you realize they kind of wiggle a lot around their housing, so it doesn't make it seem very premium. Other than that, I have plenty of headroom, plenty of leg room. As you can see, there's the view out the rear window there. The corner window out in the front makes these A-pillars very, very small, and if you set your mirrors right, this thing's very easy to see out of. So that's the front seat. You can see you have a manual parking brake, and we have a traditional lever. This is with the automatic. We'll talk about that in a second. It does come with a manual mode that you can use paddle shifters to shift up and down. And let's get this thing on the road. There's a regular keyed ignition. First thing you notice at parking lot speeds, very, very light steering. Very little steering effort to get the car going where you want it to go. Right now we're in the normal drive mode, and there are two drive modes. There's this little I button here and an S button. I is for intelligent, S is for sport. Right now, I is the default mode, and it sort of detects what kind of driving style you want to use right now. There's a little bit of delay with the throttle response. You push into it, and about a quarter second later, there's the power. Quarter to a half a second later, there's the power. If you're in drive and you switch over to sport, what that does is it increases the throttle response, makes it a little bit faster. It also changes the drive ratio of the transmission. This has a continuously variable transmission. It's something that Subaru has been using across the line now for over a decade. If we switch it into sport mode, see right now we're at 40 miles an hour, just over 1,000 RPM. And if I switch it into sport mode, RPM jumps up to about 2,000. I didn't touch the throttle. Initial impressions are road noise is a little bit there. Again, this is an economy car, an economy compact car. But it's definitely to a minimum. It's surprisingly hushed in the cabin. This car has a 2-liter boxer 4-cylinder engine. Makes 152 horsepower, 145 foot-pounds of torque. And definitely when you step into it, you can hear it. It makes itself known. This is not the most amount of power for this car. You have to kind of ring it in order to get the power out of it. So throttle jumps up to 3,000 RPM, you know, typical CVT stuff. Yeah, the steering wheel is a bit thin, so not a lot to grab in your hands when you're steering the car around. The car is very well composed on the road. Right now we're cruising around 45 miles an hour. Not a lot of road noise. Very little wind noise. And when you're just cruising, the engine is very much not in the way. So it's a comfortable around town car. Like I said, I feel decent support in the back of the seat. I wish there was more lower back support. It's kind of the seat kind of curls away from your lower back, and I wish there was a little bit more support there. Not a lot in the shoulder support department, and the seat cushion, like I said, it's very short. My legs are kind of up in the air right now. All right, we have a red light here. We'll switch into sport mode. We'll also go into the manual mode. Manual mode takes the CVT and it chops it up into 7 fake gears. Relatively quick shifts. Yeah, for a CVT, the shifts are relatively snappy. Not much delay between pressing the paddle and the transmission doing what you want. Yeah, off the line, even just normal acceleration in sport mode, the drivetrain is much more eager to give you acceleration. If you're in intelligence mode, there's more reluctance. It's like, are you sure? We're trying to save you fuel here. If you're not a spirited driver, if you're not heavy with the right foot, intelligent will be just fine. But if you want the car to do what you tell it to do, when you tell it to do it, sport mode will definitely be more along those lines here. If you ease into the throttle slowly, but then right around 10 miles an hour, 10 to 15 miles an hour, the engine cuts power in intelligence mode. It's very strange. And then you have to push harder into the gas pedal to get more acceleration. And then once you get to about 20, then it's like, oh, yeah, right, acceleration. Sure, got you, boss. This car has 16-inch wheels on it. It absorbs the bumps quite well. It's a bit of a cushy ride. So it's definitely a softer car if we move the wheel back and forth. Yeah, definitely a bit of a wallowy suspension. This car is definitely more comfort oriented as opposed to something like a Mazda 3 or maybe a Civic hatchback. This CVT definitely, it tries to get you good fuel economy. Right now we're about 33 miles an hour. We're just above 1,000 RPM. This car is rated at 28 city, 36 highway. And we'll see how it does today. We're going to turn off traction control because we're about to go on the Twisties. We'll put it in the sport mode, of course. Very nice there on the turn. Of course, Subaru all-wheel drive, symmetrical all-wheel drive, so you have power going all four wheels. So there's less understeer than you would have in just a normal front-wheel drive car. However, again, this car is more comfort-oriented. It's geared toward getting you fuel economy, especially because they have to fight against the added weight of all-wheel drive. So these tires are a bit low rolling resistance, so they are the limiting factor, especially the rear tires. This is still a front engine car, so you have a lot of the weight over the front axle, and those rear tires are kind of dancing around a little bit. They feel like they're being skidded across the pavement. They're not really stuck and gripping onto it. So that's one thing you have to consider with the handling. But the steering, again, is very light. The car goes where you point it, but there's not much feel. The steering weight is very light, very artificial. The handling is responsive. It's a nimble car. You just don't feel it. It's not a very engaging steering feel. Yeah, the first 30 degrees of turning, very light on the steering. It creates this kind of wallowy, sloppy feeling. I mean, the car is definitely under control, but it's not sharp, it's not crisp, it doesn't have that darty feel to the steering. The premium trim like we have here has a whole suite of safety features. We have the Subaru EyeSight, so we have forward collision warning, automatic emergency braking at slow speeds, a rear camera, lane departure warning, lane keep assist. So again, for someone who wants to stay safe, you know, Subaru has great safety ratings, great reliability. Let's see how we do over some speed bumps. Nice and controlled, no harsh impacts. I'll show you. We come off the speed bump, I'm going to give it power and I'll show you that little delay. And then gas, power. See that little delay? I'm going to do it again. Off the throttle. Gas. Hear that delay in the RPM? So that's something you have to accommodate for in everyday driving. Sometimes it can surprise you. You push into it and you don't know that you push into it too much until the engine goes and you slam your head in the headrest. Of course, it's not going to slam it too hard because this is not a very powerful engine. Put it in sport mode. Alright, under power, let's see. Very nice, predictable handling. Again, the throttle response is so much better in the sport mode. This is really where you can have some fun. Alright, on throttle again. A little bit understeer, yep. Again, front engine car, a lot of weight over the front axle, low rolling resistance tires. It's not going to hug the turn super well, plus you have a soft suspension. Alright, one last one, let's see here. You can have some fun in this car. Yeah, again, it's very nimble, short wheelbase, all-wheel drive. This car sort of has two personalities. I would say 70% of the time it's just a nice, comfortable, cruiser-oriented hatchback, economy hatchback. And the other is, you know, this does have some relation to the famous WRX rally cars. So they did put it, again, nimble handling, responsive handling, not very engaging steering feel, but the car does what you tell it to do. From 30 degrees plus or minus off the center, it's much more, a much slower steering ratio, and then it feels like the steering ratio quickens up beyond that. Nice fresh pavement. Car's very quiet. The only thing you really hear is a little bit of engine hum. Again, that 2-liter has to work a little bit hard to get this car around town. The CVT tries to attempt shifts. It's not very crisp. I mean, the engine doesn't have the power to afford a large drop in RPM like a normal shift, so it kind of holds the revs somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 RPM under normal acceleration. So a typical, slightly underpowered CVT behavior. The average buyer for this vehicle is probably not focused on that. They probably just want something safe, comfortable, relatively quiet, easy to drive. And this car is all those things. There's little imperfections in the road. You feel them, but they're nicely dampened. They're nicely dampened. You feel like there's a rubber ball, like one of those stress balls between the wheels and your seat. It's nicely cushioned. We'll go into sport mode, do a little acceleration here. Gas. Much better throttle response. And the engine much more eager to rev up there. There's no considerations for fuel mileage. Let's do this acceleration. We're going to go to the manual mode. And we're going to stay in intelligent. Gas, power. See, there's that delay. Even in the manual mode, you get to second gear, and every time the gears drop, they're nice and snappy, but going from first to second to third, significant power cut. The car kind of jerks back and forth. You just cut out a lot of that torque that the vehicle needs to actually get going. Manual mode can be engaging. Again, it'll auto downshift if you get too low in the RPMs. It'll auto upshift if you hit red line. Just keeping everything nice and safe and reliable for the transmission. This time we'll do a launch from the manual mode and sport mode. See what happens. Very lively, much more lively. There's such a big difference between sport mode and intelligent mode in this car. Like, compared to that Mazda from last week, where sport mode, all it did was keep you in lower gears. There was no change in no change in the throttle response, no change in the steering feel. There's no change in the steering feel here either. But the character of this car is so different. So different. Subaru definitely made the effort here in terms of giving you two different characters. One is honestly very eco-friendly and cost-cutting, almost, I would say, borderline lethargic. And the other one's just lively and spry and eager and, oh yeah, you want power? I only have 152 horsepower, but here you go. Like, wow, impressive. Let's do a highway merge here, see how that works. So we're in the manual mode here. Flooring it. This car is not fast. Not fast in the least. Like I said, in the manual mode, you do have 7 gears. 7th is really not a passing gear. It's kind of almost like an overdrive gear. And 7th and 6th are very close to each other. Right now we're at 65 miles an hour. In 7th gear, we're right around maybe 1,700 RPM. But going to 6th, about 2,000. So 6th and 7th are only about 300 RPM apart from each other. At highway speeds, the car is nice and controlled. It's not wandering around. Feels nice and planted. Low to medium levels of road noise. A little bit of wind noise coming around from the side mirrors. For an economy car, it's relatively pleasant. We're going to go into sport mode, automatic, highway merge. Full power. Yeah, sport mode's where it's at. It'll happily get up into 4,000 or 5,000 RPM. And then all of a sudden back we're in intelligent drive, 65 miles an hour, nice and hushed. Now note, when you're in drive mode, the highest gear is actually slightly higher than when you're in 7th gear. 7th gear, 65 miles an hour, we were about 1,700 RPM. If you're in drive and you're at 65 miles an hour, you're maybe around 1,600, 1,650. So it's just slightly higher. If we go from drive to sport, bumps the RPM up a bit. Last exit ramp. Yeah, some understeer. These tires, they're trying their best, man. They're like, we weren't designed for this. And the suspension's like, we weren't either. So, keep in mind, this is not a hot hatch. It's a capable hatch. It's a comfortable hatch. But if you want something sporty, you know, either drive this in sport mode all the time, or maybe get something else. Now that the test drive is completed, let's give the 2022 Subaru Impreza Premium Hatchback a Schwartz Score. The Schwartz Score is broken down into 12 categories with a total potential score of 100. Scores are given right after the test drive when impressions are still fresh. Exterior styling of the 2022 Subaru Impreza hatchback is relatively eye-catching for the compact car category. Subtle creases from the nose of the car continue as strong character lines down the side and conclude well at the back. The wheels on the premium trim are also a nice balance of stylish and subtle. The car is well proportioned, but the overall design won't stir many souls. It earns a 6 out of 10. Interior materials are not the best. While all common touchpoints are nicely padded and the interior sports a clean design, the large presence of many plastics reminds you that this is an economy car. The rear door sills aren't padded like the front ones, and the ability to wiggle the climate control knobs within their housings is a bit disconcerting. It gets a 4 out of 10 here. The front seats have decent mid-back support and bolstering. However, the foam material is a bit firm and the lack of lumbar support or seat cushion angle adjustments make the front seats not super pleasant for long road trips, especially for those with longer legs who will be missing out on some thigh support. However, with ample leg and headroom, they come out with a 4 out of 10. The rear seats are also okay for shorter trips with an acceptable but not generous amount of legroom or headroom for my 6-foot figure. Those who are shorter will be better off. The seat foam here is also relatively firm and the flat cushion angle robs most thigh support. Footroom is tight with the front seat all the way down. It gets a 3 out of 10. Road noise is mostly under control in the 2022 Subaru Impreza hatch. Older, rougher surfaces will produce louder sounds in the cabin, but it never approaches an offensive level. This is one area of refinement for the vehicle. 3 out of 5. The engine gets quite vocal above 3,000 RPM, and the CVT's tendency to hold higher revs under hard acceleration doesn't help tone things down. While cruising around, however, things are much more hushed. It also receives a 3 out of 5 here. In terms of acceleration, whereas 0 to 60 time below 3 seconds is a 10 and above 9.5 seconds is a 1, the Subaru Impreza with its 9.5 seconds 0 to 60 earns a 1 out of 10. The drivetrain has two distinct personalities. In the intelligent mode, fuel savings is the priority. A longer than average delay between pressing the accelerator and receiving acceleration, in conjunction with some low-end power cuts, make the car feel underpowered and borderline lethargic. In the sport mode, things liven up greatly. The CVT is eager to jump to higher RPMs and throttle response is much faster. The car feels like it gains 10 to 20 horsepower in sport mode. Overall, 3 out of 5 for drivetrain. Handling is surprisingly good in the Impreza. The symmetrical all-wheel drive and shorter wheelbase help the car feel nimble around tight turns, and it could almost be called fun to drive. However, the soft suspension and low rolling resistance tires reduce overall grip and bring the handling score to 5 out of 10. Steering feel is lacking in the 2022 Subaru Impreza. Steering weight is quite light, which creates an artificial feeling between the wheel and the front tires. The car goes where you point it, but there's no feedback through the wheel or immediacy from steering inputs, a trait found in sportier vehicles. 4 out of 10. Ride quality is one of the strong suits of this vehicle. No road imperfections are hidden, but all are dampened to some degree. Even larger potholes or speed bumps are cushioned before they are transmitted to the cabin, making for a very comfortable ride for a compact hatchback. The Impreza gets an impressive 7 out of 10 here. The 2022 Subaru Impreza hatchback is quite easy to see out of thanks to tall windows, very thin A-pillars, and a modest size blind spot. The design of the car, combined with Subaru's EyeSight system, basically eliminates visibility concerns. It earns a 4 out of 5. This brings the Schwartz Score of the 2022 Subaru Impreza Premium Hatchback to 47 out of 100. Lastly, the EPA rated the 2022 Subaru Impreza hatchback with the CVT at 28 miles per gallon city, 36 highway. We achieved a commendable 35 miles per gallon during our test drive.